an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Wizards at War, Chapter 10, Friendly Fire. In this chapter, Nita and Scarrett wind up in a fucking shootout, which was highly unexpected. And then, who should show up to save their asses? Like, Nita is on the verge of sacrificing herself. Who should show up but fucking Carmela? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Patricia for commissioning this episode. Yama's in the chat. Hi, Yama. Yama, thank you so much, by the way, for my Roomba. Hi. Sorry, I know that this is not the Natasha's Wedding Gifts chat, but I'm also going to send you a little card. But yes, thank you, Patricia, for commissioning this. So this chapter, guys, I was so not ready. Y'all heard how much shit I was talking about Carmela when she was acting like she was going to somehow come with them on their fucking mission. And I not, like, honestly, I still stand by most of that. Like, as much as it turns out she was able to handle herself, it still feels like you can handle yourself when you have time to plan and you have access to your tools and everything. I don't know how she's going to manage when she's just out there in the world amongst wizards. That said, this is a really badass moment. I love her so much. She is just the best. I like Kit. The fact that you have such an animosity, and it's not real animosity, you know, but it's like this thing that happens with siblings. I'm just like, Kit, you don't even understand how lucky you are that she is as rad as she is. I mean, he probably does understand, actually, because he has a sister who sucks. So I take that back. I bet he does get it. But anyway, I'm going to have to really focus here because so much happens. Although it's a very action heavy section, so probably there'll be a fair amount of like jumping over some of the details. So they come out at the crossings, and this is something that I feel like I've mentioned before, is just how much I accidentally conflate wizards with aliens in this universe. Oh, Patricia's here. Hi, Patricia. And I forget that not everybody passing through the crossings is a wizard. Not every alien is a wizard. And like, I should know that by now, because obviously we went to a whole planet where they're all aliens and there's one wizard on the entire planet. So I don't know why that's not sinking into me. But I guess I keep picturing the way this universe works as being sort of like Harry Potter-esque, where you go through a gateway and all of a sudden you're just surrounded by people with certain abilities. When in fact, it's just you go through a gateway to an access of planets and worlds that the average person on Earth doesn't have access to. But Earth is sort of an exception to the way most places tend to operate. It seems like the crossings is just part of the way things work for plenty of other planets, you know? I wonder how many other planets there are like Earth where non-wizards genuinely have no connection to outside planets at all. And most people aren't even aware that there's life. I would be fascinated to find out why it's set up that way for Earth and how that happened and how many other planets are also like that. And if that's like a benefit in any way. It feels like it's only a hindrance, but I might be wrong. There's probably upsides that I'm not aware of. But anyway, so when they come out in the crossings, Scaret's first question to Nita is, do you hear that? And she says no, and then realizes, oh, that's the weird thing, is that there's no sound at all. And it's hard for me to think of a similar sort of energy. If you've worked in service in a lot of different places, you will have been in buildings that are normally bustling and are now empty. You're here late at a theater to clean up, or maybe, at an auditorium, or like, what do you call it, where they have sporting events, the giant, I want to say gymnasium, but not really. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there are going to be points where even the busiest places are usually empty. Even Grand Central has parts of the day that are like completely dead. And it's not that there aren't trains coming and going and stuff at all hours, but they are much more sparse, at the wee hours. So the main thing that I really thought of here as like a sort of parallel that many of us may have experienced recently is what happened with the pandemic. Driving through areas, shopping centers, like, where it's 4:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Normally it's a madhouse. Everybody's starting to get off work and they're heading for Target, and they're heading for restaurants at around 6 p.m. And there was a real eeriness last year in the summertime, especially when it was like really intensely being enforced, to driving through these huge swaths of normally extremely busy shopping areas and seeing nobody, like signs out, no cars. And even at gas stations and stuff, people were like trying to not stop or just hurrying in and out and not touching things. Like, it was just a very weird vibe. And, I say that with a full acknowledgement that I live in Texas and they just did not enforce shit the same way here, and they still don't. But even the little bit of exposure I got to that atmosphere made a big impression. So that was what came to mind here. I just kept thinking like, okay, yeah, there's something that feels so unnatural as to almost be spooky at times when things are like this, So she tries to say, Nita does, it's the middle of the night, and Scarrett says the middle of a crossings night doesn't look like this. Somewhere in 15 or 20,000 worlds, it's always the middle of the day for somebody. Somebody is always passing through. Nita shivered again. You did say when we left that the reduced traffic was a symptom of something that was going to get worse. Yes. Scarrett sounded unnerved. But not this much worse. Not this fast. And all of a sudden, he switches to speaking mind to mind, which that's the one drawback to listening to this in audiobook, is that when you're reading it, it switches from like having the quotation marks to a italics, so that okay, this isn't being said out loud. But in the audiobook, it isn't clear until you are explicitly told. So for a second, I didn't understand what was happening here. And then it's made clear, okay, there's something about the silence here that feels like we shouldn't be talking out loud. And it's not just the kind of thing where you automatically keep your voice low in a place that's dead quiet because you feel like you can't disturb the silence. It's like there's a danger, potentially something that if we draw its attention, it's going to be a problem for us, kind of thing. So he goes over to the console, and he says, in the last 3 standard days, we are seeing all of the recent transits, and for hours, no one has come through at all. And Nita is like, okay, yeah, that's not even possible, is it? Like, I can tell that you don't think it is. So he says, I want to have a look at the central management station. Also, where are my people? Because they're supposed to be in charge of this whole thing. And that was my question also, and something that continues to concern me. I think by the end of this chapter, we may get confirmation. I don't remember. But throughout this, I was just like, oh man, is Scarrett going to like find out that his relatives have been attacked, and like the last words they exchanged was in the midst of a fight, and now he's just going to be riddled with guilt forever? Because I was just dreading that, you know? But we don't... Even Nita is like, when they reach that spot where there's that sort of like weird jungle gym rack thing that his ancestor had been hanging on, she admits to herself that she was a little afraid of like turning the corner and the guy's body hanging there. And that is not what's going on, thank the Lord. But so down the corridor, Nita could just make out a portion of the shining rack. Yeah, here it is. Nita's eyes went wide. Without actually hearing anything, she felt a sound go blasting past her ear. "Scare!" she cried, and threw herself on top of him, knocking him down flat against the floor. And then the actual sound came, and a blast of energy just above her head, a moment too late, for Nita had just said that 14th word in the speech, and her personal shield spell had gone up around her and down to the ground on either side, covering Scarrett as well. And this is the paradexic effect. Now, guys, it's been a minute. You know, it's been a couple weeks because I had my wedding vacation and whatnot. And I remember her getting in touch with this sort of like essence of wizardry being. Feels like the wrong word, but I guess I'm going to go with that. I don't remember how she finds it, though. Is it in a dream? How does she actually like access the connection that she now has to it? Which, by the way, is like absolutely fucking key. If she didn't have that in this chapter, she'd be dead. They'd probably be dead. So thank God. Mordecai says wedding vacation. Wait, honeymoon? Well, there was the honeymoon also. But we also had our vacation the week before the wedding with our friends at the parks, where we went to Universal and Disney and stuff like that. So I'm just calling the whole thing as one piece, the wedding vacation, wedding related antics. So yeah, she says, "Are you carrying anything offensive?" Nita says this to Scarrett. Guys, I totally did not get what she was saying. What I thought she meant when she says this is there something on you that would make people think you were a threat? That kind of offensive. Like, are you carrying anything that would cause someone to attack us? But what she means is, do you have a weapon? Like, an offensive weapon? I did not get that for a second. I was just like, why are you, like, Scarrett? Nobody would do that at the crossings. And then I realized what the fuck she meant, and I felt like an idiot. So Nita could just make out a number of tall, thin shadows leaning out from behind various outward projecting kiosks to fire, then ducking back again. And eventually, when he asks her what color they are, she says she thinks magenta, which I take personal offense to, as magenta is essentially like my color. And I don't like that these bad guys who are very mercenary are my color. I don't like it. It bothers me. Just having to register my displeasure on that. She grabbed the charm that looked like a lightning bolt, said the single word in the speech that released the wizardry's safety. Instantly, a shape of light formed in the air in front of her, a long, slender stalk tapering down to an almost needle-like point. It was one of the numerous wizardly versions of a blaster, this one being nothing more than a portable linear accelerator that pushed a thin stream of charged particles as close to light speed as they could go, and then, this being, after all, magic, just a little faster. The effects of being struck by a beam from the accelerator tended to be noticeable and unfortunate for the target. Nita grabbed the accelerator out of the air with the intention of making its use very unfortunate for someone in a big hurry if they didn't stop shooting at her. So this was really fun for me because we just don't get a whole lot of out-and-out fights in these books. We had the fights with the Fomor in The Wizard Abroad. I don't, like, most of the time, it tends to be a lot of sort of psychological, spiritual battles. But there's very little, like, I'm aiming to kill you kind of battles. I'm into it just for the sake of the novelty of it being this black and white for a second, you know? It's not that I don't appreciate subtlety and nuance, but every now and then, you just want there to be a bad guy that's like, we're gonna go for it. And it's extremely obvious that if they did not handle it this way, that they would be dead, that there isn't another option. And what's interesting here is that it's specifically mentioned phrases. There are phrases every wizard knows that they may not be able, that they may have to use in the line of work, and they really don't want to. But most wizards nonetheless dream of using them just once or twice under the right circumstances. And that totally makes sense. You know, this is the kind of thing that I think that there's like so many weapons, you know, around the world that there's shooting ranges and stuff for a reason, not just because people are trying to improve their skill, but they just want to play with a toy. You know, I mean, it's just that simple. And I'm not mad about that. In life's name, she shouted in the speech while the energy blasts kept striking her shield. And for its sake, I advise you that I am here on the business of the powers that be. Your actions towards me and through me toward them will determine the continuation or revocation of your present status. Be warned by me and desist. Determine the continuation or revocation of your present status is a really twisty way of saying your life or your death. I find that hilarious. I have never heard it put that way before, and I am 1,000% here for it. I just found that so funny. It's so indirect and vague that it doesn't sound that threatening, actually, you know, unless you like pay attention. And for a second, it looks like it worked. And Nita starts to be a bit smug about it. And then all of a sudden, they start to fucking go at her harder. And she's like, oh, God damn it. Like, so, sorry, guys, you blew it. Both angry and sad, she chose her first target with care. Aimed and fired. Away down the corridor, across the central intersection of the crossings, that source of the blaster fire failed. Sorry, Nita said under her breath, meaning it, though not hesitating to immediately choose another target. She fired again. Sorry. This is fascinating to me. So, guys, there are just infinite number of films out there, TV series out there, where we've got like these people who are trained to be warriors, but the whole point is that like they hope that they never actually have to use their skills, right? That's like just such a common theme, is like you are attempting to be peaceful and you only pull out the weapons if you really have absolutely no other choice. And what's difficult is that as viewers, when you watch those kinds of things, it's very hard, I think, for us to feel the sense of tragedy that the characters who are put in the position of having to fight feel. Because as viewers, we are so desensitized to violence just anyway, you know. But also, these are people who are threatening our people. These characters have grown to be like our friends that we care about. So when somebody comes for them, we're like, yeah, take those motherfuckers out. You know, it's just no question, because we're so used to things being handled this way, especially in fiction. So when a character is really conflicted about whether to kill somebody or not, most of the time, the reaction the audience has to that is impatience and frustration. Because we're like, yo, dude, kill the guy, for fuck's sake. Like, we don't care about him. He is nobody. He just tried to kill you. He tried to kill somebody that you love or that we love, and is fucking your plans up. And it is absolutely no skin off our teeth if you take their life and we never see them in this movie again. And I don't, like, nothing leaps immediately to mind for me where it has really been gotten across how upsetting it is for the warriors in question to actually have to lash out. And when I say fiction, I'm talking about films and TV specifically. When you're reading a book, you can be in that character's head in a way that you can't possibly in a visual medium. So you get to hear their regret and the way that doing this is tearing them up. Nita is like actually an example of somebody who really is able to focus and set it aside to a degree, how bad she feels. Because I have read perspectives where it's just way more conflicted and devastating. But this is something, because I've mentioned a few times how interested I would be in seeing the series on screen, and how often I feel like, oh, I don't even know how you do this. Like, this is one of the few book series that has wizardry in it that I don't think adaptation would work for at all. You would have to change up so much in order for it to work on screen that I feel what makes it special would be kind of lost. And then I started to think about moments like this, and the best I can come up with, it's not really a fair comparison, because it's like, it's not somebody who's trained as a warrior being forced. But Breaking Bad, there is an instance of Walter White having to kill somebody for the very first time, and he tries to find a way to not do it and doesn't want to do it. And he thinks at one point that he has kind of gotten through to this person and that it won't be necessary after all. And eventually realizes that they have a weapon on them, actually, and they are definitely planning to kill him. They were just trying to lull him into a sense of security. So he has to do it anyway. And it absolutely tears him up. And as folks who have seen that show know, he gets over it. You know, he eventually becomes like kind of a scumbag. But that, for me, got across that sense of just like, I just did not want to do this feeling. But mostly, when you're watching something and these people have skills that you don't, Walter White feels a lot more like an ordinary person. He's not out here karate chopping shit, doing flippy flips in the air, perfect marksman, superhero, any of that. He's just a regular guy. So we can relate to his situation. But when you've got, like, Jedi, let's take Jedi for an example. Jedi have these skills that are just, like, practically superhuman. And when I'm watching stuff where Jedi are all conflicted about whether to hurt somebody, when we have just seen how amazing they are in battle in any other situation, you just want them to do it, you know, just stop talking about it. So I'm just spitballing here about this moment with her and how it just made an impression on me that she deeply regrets it, but she is going for it anyway. And as much as she apologizes every time, it's acknowledged that there's a sense of excitement at getting to test this thing out for the first time, which is something that I think isn't often even acknowledged at all, you know? So Scarrett goes down towards the intersection here, and they are really going for him. His shield is starting to glow really red. Every bolt that hit it bounced instantly and directly back in the direction from which it had come. Any unshielded being standing in the same place after having shot at him suddenly found itself on the receiving end of a boosted version of whatever it had fired. Which honestly is the best possible weapon that I can think of. But just, I'm rubber, you're glue. I mean, unbeatable, right? Like, that's just perfect. The fire from in front of them began to lessen, but now Nita felt some fire hitting her shield from behind. She turned and started walking backward, aiming carefully at more of those thin shadow shapes. "They're behind us too, Scare," she called. "How are we planning to get out of here? I don't want to get cut off." And Scarrett is just like, "I'm not going anywhere because my family was here and now they're not, and I would like to know what the fuck is going on there. And also, they look like they're trying to take the crossings, which we absolutely cannot be having. So I'll open a gate and I will put you on the next train home and I'm going to stay." And Nita is like, "I'm sorry, are you fucking high? Of course you're not doing that. What do you mean?" And honestly, Scarrett, what do you mean? You know she's not going to agree to that, kiddo. Come on. So they ran across the intersection together. As Nita had expected, both their shields immediately lit up with crossfire. She popped up, aimed at a shadow that was getting too close for her comfort, and it went down. Her stomach turned. Well, Nita hadn't been able to clearly see the results of her own fire. Self-defense had been easier. I like that, you know? I just like the acknowledgement of every nuance, the changes that a circumstance makes to how she feels about handling this weapon and meting out judgment and death, you know, because that's what's happening. So I love this. She fired again and again, and once again her stomach wrenched. "I hate this," Nita thought. "But I'd hate it more if the weapon stopped doing that." You know? So finally he rigs something up and tells her that it'll give us a few extra minutes. The console shield will cope with this level of fire all right, but how long do you think it's going to stay like this? Whoever those people are, they plainly intend to take the crossings by force. When they find they don't have enough force, they'll bring up some more. I give us maybe 5 minutes. By then, I should be able to find out why the crossing zone defense systems haven't come up, and either I can get them up again, or do something else. But you need to keep them off my back. Stick some of your power into the shield. Give it a boost. Here are the schematics. And here comes the thing that is pretty fun. She looks at the schematic, and she's just like, "Scarrett, I want to help, but you know I don't know what the fuck this means." Like, come on, buddy. Right there, energy conduit. Put whatever spare power you've got right into that. Nita let out a breath and started to think of how to hook a power feed wizardry into the energy conduit. In the back of her mind, instantly, the Paradexis showed her the spell. Nita hurriedly spoke the words, and a few seconds later felt the built-up power inside her floating into the shield. "Okay," she said to Scarrett, "I've boosted it maybe 500%. "Let's hope that's enough," Scarrett said. Not helpful, Scarrett. So this is when they identify what these creatures are. And he knows exactly what they are. Tawolf. That's what he calls them. Taywolf? Taywolf. I'm going to call them Taywolf. They're a very mercantile people. They'd buy anybody from anybody and sell anybody to anybody if the price was right. Looks like someone on our staff decided that our security was merchandise. The Taywolf sell themselves, too. They make some of the best mercenaries in this part of the galaxy. I'm loving this. I love this. Look, there is a problem sometimes with having there be an entire planet of a type of alien that all shares one major characteristic of personality. Of course, you know, it's like the Star Wars, like every planet is, there's the snow planet and there's the desert planet, and that's all for the, like, if we're talking about human beings, we are varied. And just saying like, oh, human beings love being mercenaries. I mean, no, plenty of us do not want to do that. However, for the sake of this story, I am, not only is it fine to do this just as a writer, but I'm also willing to believe that maybe there are some planets with just one type of being on them, and that's it, and they all have the same sort of like value system and everything. That might just be part of the universe, you know? It sounds unlikely to us, but perhaps that's just the you know, there's all kinds of ways things can work. So she asks if he can turn the defense systems on again because somebody took them offline. And this is the like, he's talking about how somebody must have sold them out. Either they got, and it was an inside job, or somebody was able to like get in and get some of their information. So let's see. The pace of fire against the shields had started to step up. Nita was having trouble seeing through it. There were so many impacts now. They're covering for something, she said. I need better visibility, she thought. Once again, the wizardry constructed itself in her head, ready to go. The shield cleared briefly, showing her far down the concourse a very large, very heavy piece of machinery being floated out from a place of concealment. Uh-oh, Nita said. They're rolling out the big guns. And he says that he can't get the defense systems up again. He's trying to figure it out. And he's like, I just wish that I had paid more attention when my ancestor was trying to tell me this shit before. The lens in her shield gave her a much better view of that piece of machinery as it came drifting toward them, being guided with some kind of remote by a Taywolf who was dashing from the cover of one kiosk to the next. The weapon had a muzzle of impressive size and some kind of massive generating apparatus hooked to the back of it. Can we stop that? She said silently to the paradexic effect. There was no immediate answer. Ooh, don't like that. This whole thing is really tense in a way that if these firefights were more frequent in these books, I don't know that I would feel the same level of tension. I feel like having it be as intermittent and sparingly done as she does it, I feel like that is what makes it feel so dire, you know? So I don't know. I'm just really impressed with how afraid I was for the two of them. Even as Nita is stepping out and offering up her life, I know Nita is going to be okay. I do not expect that we're going to see the death of one of the main two characters from this series. It's not like that's impossible. But let's be honest, in most children's books, and these are like YA, that isn't the way this sort of thing is handled. This isn't a George R.R. Martin book. So I don't think, not really, that it's going to go that way. However, I was still extremely worried for her. I was still genuinely like, I don't know that there isn't some way for her to like die. There are plenty of stories where a main character is killed and comes back. I mean, there can still be extreme trauma inflicted, suffering inflicted. So as this was all going down, I was really starting to get agitated because I was like, this book is called Wizards at War. I don't know what could be in store here. You know, I think there's only one book after this one. I may be wrong about that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if she decided that she was going to have there be some really intense consequences in this book because it's a war, that would make sense. And I don't know what those would look like. So We got to make a choice in about a minute. Run for it or make a stand. If we run, Scarrett said, this place will be lost to us and won by those Taywolf. They and whoever is behind them will have free run of my planet and this whole part of the galaxy. Since whether they know it or not, they're doing the Lone One's business, no way I'm leaving them here. I will not let the Lone Power have the crossings. But what can you do? The one thing they're sure I don't want to do under any circumstances, and therefore the one thing they didn't sabotage completely enough to keep me out. It's a self-destruct. And he winds up, like, taking the key out. And it's not like he's, like, setting it up, but he winds up swallowing it a little bit later, and it's just like, that way they can't get it. And if I need to totally destroy it, I can. So let's see. Nita looked at that slowly oncoming weapon and gulped. Give me 10 seconds first, she said. Scarrett swiveled almost all his eyes at her except for the one that was watching the self-destruct console. What? Why? What kind of energy are those things using? The Paradexis gave her the answer as if it were the manual itself, laying out in graphics and the speech with blinding speed. Nita scanned the diagram it showed her. It's fusion, she thought, and there are ways to damp that down, if you just mess with the magnetic bottle a little. Nita shivered. Once upon a time, the Lone Power had done something similar to the Earth's sun. And then she smiled just slightly. To turn its own trick against it, but with just a little extra twist. That fusion reaction right there, Nita said to the Paradexis. Let's snuff it. There is a high probability that the smothered reaction will interact unfavorably with matter in the immediate vicinity. Will our shield hold? Yes. Then let's start getting unfavorable. Honestly, that's a pretty baller line. I love it. Then let's start getting unfavorable. I love it so much. So, Nita started speaking the words, feeling the power build. This wizardry felt less like a thrown weapon than a squeezing fist, like a gauntlet into which she'd thrust her own hand, pressing the power of the mobile weapon's tightly controlled fusion reaction into a smaller and smaller space. The reaction wasn't built to take such punishment. It started to strangle. Nita held the pressure, squeezing tighter, feeling the hot, bright little light in her hand burning her, but nonetheless starting to go out, fading, failing. The magnetic bottling around the little fusion fire inside the weapon, responding to the fusion's own loss of energy, lost its balance and stepped down to match it. Nita smiled and quickly opened her hand. Every Taywolf anywhere near the mobile weapon turned to stare at the slow, threatening glow of light beginning to burn through the weapon's metallic fabric. Suspecting what was coming, Nita hastily told the control structure's force field to go opaque itself. Almost the last glimpse she got was of Taywolf scattering in every possible direction. Then came the sudden blinding burst of repressed starfire as the magnetic bottle in the mobile weapon failed. The force field was opaque to light, but not noise or vibration. From outside came a roar, and the floor under Nita and Scarrett rocked. Things crashed and clattered all around them. After a few seconds, the ruckus started to die down. Nita let the gauntlet of wizardry vanish and let the control console's shield go transparent again. I mean, that's pretty baller. She's just a boss in this section. I am loving this so much. So she's looking around. They're trying to figure out, did we manage to actually beat them? And it looks for a minute like they really did. It looks like they're in the clear. It's feeling, I got fooled. I don't know about y'all, but I definitely was sort of taken in here. Nita reached for her other space pocket to get her manual. I'll do a detector spell. At least now we have a specific life sign to scan for. We can... She blinked. Scare! Get down! The intuition hadn't even come as not hearing that time. It was as if it bypassed Nita's brain and went straight to her muscles. She threw herself on top of Scarrett again and took him out of the line of fire, and once more she got her personal shield up just in time. A good thing, as the control console shield was suddenly struggling under the onslaught of several fusion beams like the one that would have come out of the first mobile weapon if Nita hadn't destroyed it. "They've got 2 more of them," Nita shouted over the noise. "No, make that 3, and they're bigger ones." Oh, I was so mad. You guys, can I just tell you? I was so mad. It didn't even occur to me that they would have more than one of this thing. Of course, I'm thinking, oh, okay, here's their one big bad weapon. This was like, this feels like the climactic moment. And she goes and does this very intense thing that has this big effect. And I was like, oh, wow, she really pulled it out. Thanks, Paradexis. That's rad. I never dreamed that a weapon like this, that they would just have access to like multiple of them like it was nothing, because it was made to seem so special in its way. So Nita says, "I can't do more than one of the unfavorable wizardries at a time, and while I'm doing that, the other big guns are going to blow the main shield away." So she's trying to figure out what to do. And she's like, maybe we should just bail. We can make a gating and get out of here. And Scarrett is like, dude, there is so much energy flying through this air. If you try and make a world gate right now, it's going to like fuck your whole shit up and you're going to get vaporized, basically. He says you'll come out at your transit point as a half a thwat of powdered Nita. I wonder how much a thwat is, Nita thought, scowling in terrified fury. Oh, God. Yeah, that's definitely the kind of thing that would occur to me, even though it's like not the time to wonder about that. It's not supposed to end like this, she thought. If I'm going to die, it should be right in the middle of things, not out at the edge, and not until I know my universe is safe. But suddenly, this seemed untrue. Suddenly, Nita began to understand the feeling she'd read about in books but never really understood. The feeling that it was genuinely all over. That nothing further could be done, except to go out as well as you could. For a moment, the realization froze her rigid. But only for a moment. So, she tells Scarrett, I'm going to stop feeding power to the shield. So are you ready? And he's like, for what? Because he knows. Like, I think in that moment, he hears it in her voice and is like, what are you doing? And it's too late. She stands up and she goes out. The dimples in the main shield grew deeper and deeper as she watched. In a moment, one of the weapons would punch through and it would be all over. Nita lifted her hands in the air, spread them out to either side, and said silently to the Paradexis, all right, let's go. You know what I need. She closed her eyes. Perfectly clear in her inner vision, hung and burned the words in the speech that gave the powers that be the authorization to take the last thing you had, your life, and make the best possible use of it. I don't know why this is so, like, beautiful, but it truly, like, the way it's written, it just, there's a practicality to it that it's, like, so devoid of sentimentality that I am affected sentimentally by it because of that. Does that make sense? You were, of course, allowed to make suggestions. Take everything I have and clear all these creatures and weapons out of here, so Scarrett can do what he has to do to keep the Lone One from getting the crossings. For just a second, she thought sadly of Kit. There would be no way to tell him what she was having to do. No way to say goodbye. And that got to me, guys. Because genuinely, like, if I were about to die, I would think about my friends and family and, like, how awful it was about to be for them finding out. You know, that would be on my mind. Nita squeezed her eyes tightly shut and opened her mouth to say the first word of the wizardry. And then her eyes flew open at a sound she had not expected. a soft, strange hum, scaling up, getting louder. Right in front of her, the bigger mobile weapon that was trained on them shuddered, strained itself apart, and blew up. Then there's another one. She's trying to see what's happening. Are they malfunctioning? Or is someone else doing that? Are they on our side? And what if they're not? I love this moment because she throws herself on Scarrett yet again. And Scarrett mentions again the whole, like, you really do want to be more than just friends, don't you? Like, brings back that joke again. I gotta say, guys, Philippe is adorable, you know? And at first he kind of, like, had my heart because he's just cute. A little Christmas tree character versus, like, a centipede-looking character. No offense, centipedes, but you freak me out. And I feel like it's just natural that I'm gonna, like, feel a little bit less frightened by something that looks like a tree that you put up at one of your favorite holidays. But Scarrett has really grown on me as, like, one of my favorites that they have worked with in these books. He's just got a sort of energy to him that I really like. There's, like, a sharp humor that is so intelligent, you know? And I really enjoy him a lot. So she tells him to put a sock in it, and he just says, I don't wear socks. So at this point, something steps out of, like, the smoke and light. It's humanoid. What's that hanging off its head? Humanoids don't usually have tentacles there. And eventually she begins to realize that it's a braid. The skin color was one of the possible human colors. The eyes and other features seemed all to be in the right place, and the clothes. Geez, will you look at those? Nita thought at the sight of the tight black t-shirt, the slightly retro cargo pants in a truly eye-jangling hot pink and green floral print, and the strappy little pink boots. And the tentacle wasn't a tentacle at all, but hanging down in front of one shoulder, a single, long, thick, dark braid. Nita's mouth dropped open as the girl came all the way out of the smoke. She had a light backpack purse on her back, some kind of holster hanging at one hip, and a wicked grin on her face. It's Carmela. Do you guys know how long it took me to realize? It's not until she says Carmela out loud that I knew. It didn't even occur to me that it was Carmela. It genuinely just absolutely wasn't even a fucking option in my mind. And the way that she is described, it's very clear that, like, we're supposed to know who this is. So I was like, what am I missing? Who could this possibly be? What's going on? And I just can't believe that, like, Carmela just wasn't even in my head at all. She's so casual about this whole thing too. How the heck did you do that? Carmela smiled. From the holster, the kind that beauticians carry their hairdryers in, she pulled out a 2-foot-long object that seemed to combine the features of a curling iron and an egg beater. The beaters throbbed faintly with a threatening glow, like the one that had come from the first mobile weapon, just before Nita blew it up. But that's just a laser dissociator. Was, Carmela said. I sent away for the free upgrade. Oh, Carmela. So this is fun. You know what this reminds me of? And this happens a lot in anything where there's people who have supernatural abilities. You eventually get characters who don't have supernatural abilities, but learn how to make do with other types of objects or other abilities that in some ways can be seen as supernatural. I mean, Carmela being able to use the speech feels a little bit supernatural to me. But it's not the same thing. She's not a wizard, you know? And there are so many fictions where this is a thing. There is somebody who starts to come into their own and experiment with objects instead, because they don't have powers. And recently, Rashawn and I are covering the Dresden Files, and there is a character in that called Butters, who he is very smart and has this sort of like the kind of mind that explores all different sorts of possibilities. So he winds up having access to like magical information, even though he isn't a wizard. And he uses that information to build tools that can do certain things. So eventually, like, Harry sees him doing shit that had never even occurred to Harry to try to make, because Harry has magic. And so it sort of makes him less creative, oddly enough. He, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, and he has other ways of being able to accomplish certain things. So he sort of falls back on that more than maybe he should. And then he watches Butters whipping out these like cool toys and tools and stuff. And he is just like, wow, that's really cool, actually. Like, what the fuck, Butters? And this reminds me of that a lot, is like her figuring out you have to give the character a way to tap into the information. That's key. And that's what she winds up doing with the television, which is pretty fun. I love this. She calls to Scarrett, "There's my favorite bunch of legs." "Hey there, cute as a bug," she said. "You okay? You look a little scorched around the edges." I have to mention here too, this audiobook narrator just does a kick-ass job of narrating Carmela. She makes her sound so like collected and cool, but very fun in a way that I feel like isn't easy to pull off. And it's just a joy to listen to. I love whenever Carmela turns up. Honestly, the audiobook narrator does a really good job with a lot of different characters. The voices that she gives to Philip versus Scarrett are pretty distinct as well. Like, you know who's talking almost right away. And that can be difficult to do when you're dealing with literal alien beings. Like, how do you, So, forgive me if I take a moment to see where the people who were shooting us are now, Nita said, and got out her manual. Sure. Carmela looked around her, admiring the architecture. Hey, nice ceiling. I love this. So, Nita smiled as the wizardry completed. Closing her eyes, in her mind, she could see a swarm of little sparks, like 30 or 40 bright bees, all seemingly orbiting one another in a tight swarm down one end of the main cross corridor. And she says they're all trying to get out, and Scarrett is like, ooh, I'd like to see them try, because I cut power off to the gates, so good luck, bitches. And they head down there. And as they walk, Carmela tells them about how the television showed her different things. So when you left, the TV and the TiVo and the DVD player were still in sync with Spot. While I was changing channels, I found where the two of them were storing the coordinates of all the places you were passing through. And since I didn't feel like just sitting around after you guys utterly ditched me, I used the TV's browser to look up where you'd been. There's a lot out there about the crossings. I thought, hey, I could go there. I know the address now. And the TV showed me how. The TV showed you? It's real helpful when it's not being bossed around by the remote. Come to think of it, it's been a lot more talkative the past few days. And it made you a world gate, Scarrett said, sounding bemused. It put it in the closet in my room, Carmela said. I told Kit I wanted a magic closet, and now I've got one. I was going to do some shopping, but when I got here, I heard all this noise, so I ran down this way. And what do I find but all these skinny purple aliens running around shooting at everything? Some of them started shooting at me, too. That was not very friendly of them. I told them to stop. They wouldn't. And then after that, I saw them shooting at you. I thought maybe Kit was there, too, so nobody gets to blow up my baby brother while I have anything to say about it. or his best friend. So I took steps. She's so great. I love her so much. I love her so much. So she's asking where he is, and I had forgotten how careful they have to be. Nita is just like, yeah, I can't like just say that out loud right here. So we're doing some work somewhere else. And Carmela's basically like, okay, lead the way. And they both try to do the whole, we appreciate you being here and everything, and she stops them both and is like, okay, what we're not going to do is try to leave me behind again, because I don't know how much more clearly I can show you. You cannot get rid of me. I will find you. I know how. So every time that you try to get rid of me is you wasting time dragging me home, and I will inevitably turn right the fuck around and track you down again and show up. So you can either deal with the fact that I am part of this now, or you can continually waste your time doing something extremely irritating and pointless. It's up to you. And I was like, she makes a solid point here. So eventually they are talked into allowing her to be part of this, but do warn her, as much as they can. I love this part so much. I have to get back to Earth first. That was what this trip was all about. You go right ahead, Carmela said. Scarrett and I will tidy up here. Scarrett looked up at Carmela, confused. Carmela looked around at the burned and broken wreckage all over the place. Scare, Carmela said. Just think of all the stuff here you can eat. Most of Scarrett's eyes went very wide. It wasn't allowed before. I mean, I'm station staff. We have to control our habits where Crossings property is concerned. My ancestors would... Your not so illustrious ancestor isn't here, is he? So don't sweat it. If I were you, I'd just tuck in now. Later on, you can blame the mess on the purple guys. Assuming there is a later. She's so smart. I'm loving this. So, at this point, they get to these aliens, the Taywolf. And basically, we're on errantry and we greet you, is like the kind of tone Scarrett takes with them. I inform you that you are now to be placed in Crossings custody for a number of local and planetary infractions. You have the right to send to your home world through our independent traveler's representative when we manage to locate it for whatever legal assistance you require. Meanwhile, we have the right to require of you all pertinent details concerning your presence here, your actions while here, and information concerning those of our station staff who were involved in attempting to prevent your access. There was a long silence. Then one of the Taywolf said, There weren't any. Weren't any what? Attempts to prevent our access. Uh-oh. So at this point, Nita's like, well, where are all the staff? And the Taywolf is just like, we don't know. They ran off. Probably hiding elsewhere on the planet. And Scarrett is just like, it doesn't sound like something that they would do, but when we left, my ancestor was acting really weird. So maybe he did something out of character because he's not himself right now, who knows? Where did you people come in from? Who sent you? And none of them will answer. And Nita does the whole, oh, you don't have to say anything. And sort of postures like she's going to try and go into their heads and get the information from them against their will. But we find out that it's very hard on the wizard who does it, as well as the wizard who is experiencing it. And Nita isn't sure that she's up for it, frankly. And one of the Taywolf basically calls her bluff and is like, fucking wizards, y'all are weak. Of course you're not going to do it. After all these centuries of being so nicey nice, you're losing your power anyway. Your people are through running this place and controlling all the wealth and power that flows through here. And then Carmela is just like, all right, hey, hold on. I have an idea. One of them, the one who had spoken first, made a strange sniffing noise, and so did its second in command. The two of them stared at Carmela with a sudden total concentration that made Nita raise the accelerator and get ready to fire. Carmela withdrew something from her bag. It was thin and black, a long, slim rectangle with a glint of gold at the ends. She held it up where all the Taywolf could see it. I have here, she said in very clear and New York accented speech, a new bar of Valrhona Caribe, a single estate Grand Cru. Nita looked in astonishment from Carmela to the Taywolf. Their eyes, already prominent enough, actually started to bug out of their heads. Very aromatic, long in the mouth, nice overflavors of candied orange and smoky vanilla, maybe just a hint of cappuccino. Sorry, guys, help me out here. I don't know where your nose or whatever you smell with is. R. I love this so much. Nita's like, yeah, you're going to have to answer our question. Oh, they're going to have to tell a lot more than just what you asked them. You're going to answer all this nice rear hates questions, aren't you, boys? Or girls. Or whatever. And when you've done that, you can form yourselves a little syndicate, and I'll give this syndicate free title to this. We can't! Our contracts! Moaned another. Oh, come on, Carmela said. Your contracts. Like you expect me to believe that somebody actually paid you this much to come in here and take this place over? I really doubt it. If someone had given the whole bunch of you the value of even half this, you'd be the highest paid mercenaries the universe ever saw. Carmela waved the chocolate bar in the Taywolf's direction again. They swayed toward it as if it had the gravitation of a micro black hole. I love this so much. And so one of the Taywolfs just says, no, the leader. He says, no. Oh my, that's too bad. Just think what you all could have had. But just because he got stubborn, well, now I'm just going to have to do this. She moved the chocolate bar to her left hand and very, very slowly moved her right hand toward it. Carmela took hold of the outer black paper wrapper between finger and thumb. Ever so gently, she started to pull on the paper as if to unwrap it. No! At least half the Taywolf screeched, and the second in command shouted, You ruin it! Right here in front of you, Carmela said, while you watch, and with the greatest possible pleasure. I'm going to pull the wrapping off and shred it. I'm going to rip off the foil and crumble it up into a little ball. And then I'm going to take the unspeakably valuable stuff inside, and I am going to break it up into those nice little squares, and I am going to eat it all. This bitch is the best. Just like GOAT, MVP, #1, forever. She is the best. Oh my God, so good. And they begin literally whimpering. Oh my God, I love this so much. Oh, it's so good. Is it a collectible or a controlled substance? Or both? Whichever way the species sees it, it's always worth a lot more in the original packaging. I love this. I mean, honestly, what a fun idea. The chocolate being valuable. Like, we heard about this. I just never thought it was going to matter. So eventually, of course, they agree to the deal. And they're like, well, we need your word as wizards. And Nita's like, oh, so now being wizards actually means something to you, when before you were just fucking mocking us for it. Okay, I see. So I'm going to transfer you to a secure holding facility, Scarrett said. We'll be along to see that you have nourishment shortly and to start your questioning. Everyone into the zone, please. A moment later, they vanished. You should get home to do what you need to do. I'll pop a gate open for you now. Are you going to be able to manage here? I'll call the planetary authorities. They'll send me plenty of staff until I can get the systems back up again and get a clearer sense of what happened here. The logs should help me figure it out. And assuming my ancestor is all right, and we don't know. I assume they're all right, just because I feel like them being genuinely hurt or killed doesn't feel like something these books would do, but I am not always right about this stuff. I mean, Nita's mom died, you know? So at this point, let's see, keep an eye on him, okay? Help him out however you can. Now, you know I live to do just that, Carmela said. So, Scarrett tells her, lose the accelerator. If anyone in your neighborhood's sensitive enough to see the wizardry, they might talk. Nita nodded, tossed the accelerator up into the air, snapped her fingers at it, and the spell resolved itself into its component words, a long tangled drift of words and symbols that hung wavering in the air like glowing weeds in water. Go, I'll be back soon. Scarrett hit a control on his console, and Nita vanished. And that is the end of chapter 10. So yeah, this was great. I can't wait to see what we get up to from here on out, having Carmela here. I am very much looking forward to seeing Carmela flirting with Ronan, because I don't know if Ronan is ready for Carmela. They were talking about how she's not ready for Ronan and his little passenger, but I don't know if they're ready for her. We'll see. All right, I'm going to wrap. Thank you guys again very much for hanging out with me. Thank you to Patricia for commissioning this. And I will be seeing you soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.